In 1 Samuel chapter 30 and the first 6 verses, we read these words. Now when David and his men came to Ziklag on the 3rd day, the Amalekites had made a raid against the Negev and against Ziklag. They had overcome Ziklag and burned it with fire, and taken captive the women and all who were in it, both small and great. They killed no one, but carried them off and went their way. And when David and his men came to the city, they found it burned with fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him raised their voices and wept until they had no more strength to weep. David's 2 wives also had been taken captive, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail the widow of Nabal of Carmel. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in soul, each for his sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. And I want to think about verse 6. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in soul, each for his sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. One of the many things for me that gives the Bible credibility is that it's honest. It talks about even the Bible heroes when they're at their lowest point, when they're maybe not that faithful, when they aren't that strong, as well as the good things that we know about them. David obviously was a real man who had real emotions and real feelings. He had genuine struggles. He was faithful, yet he was sinful. His relationship with God was strong, but sometimes he was so weak in what he did and in the decisions that he made. He wasn't ashamed to express his love for God, and he wasn't ashamed or embarrassed to cry out for help or speak out about his situation. And in 1 Samuel chapter 30, we come to one of the lowest points perhaps in David's life. Here was a real dilemma that he was in. And we've been in dilemmas ourselves, of course, haven't we? We find ourselves in a set of circumstances that seem hopeless. Everywhere you look, whichever way you turn, there's trouble. And this is exactly where David is when we get to read about him in 1 Samuel chapter 30. For 15 years at this point, he's been hunted down by Saul as though he was some kind of wild animal. Saul, the king of the Israelites, who should be protecting his people. Well, here's one of his people, but not just any one of his people. This is someone who has been selected by God to be the next king. Well, Saul's insecurities have got the better of him. He is a man who's in a privileged position, but he's forgotten that he's in that position by the grace of God. Now that he's king, he thinks he's something that he's not. Now he was no longer humble as he was in the beginning. He's not humble enough to think that if this is God's choice, then I really should mentor him and help him. The problem came to a head, of course, because on returning home for battle one time, the ladies sang the #1 hit song of the time. Saul has slain his thousands, but David has slain his tens of thousands. Saul kept his eye on David and looked for opportunities to kill him. But the attempts that he made to do that had failed. You see, it turned out that we can make our plans, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will prevail. We read about that in Proverbs 19 and verse 21. There is no demon, no devil, no man, no woman, no institution, no political party, no politician, no false religion, no apathetic Christian, no circumstance that can stop what God has planned. If he's purposed it, it's going to take place, and he'll fulfill it with us going along with him or not. If you find yourself as a child of God being oppressed or abused or persecuted or even laughed at for your faith in God, those who are doing it are not just taking on you, they're taking on God. So we must take comfort in this and not give up. David's response is, because of the situation that he's in with Saul, to join the Philistines. Who are the Philistines? They're the enemy of God. They're the ones who persecute the nation of Israel and have done over and over and over again. And here, David is taking refuge with those who are doing the persecuting of God's people. Have you ever wondered, as I so often have, when people stop attending our meetings, if you're part of a group that meets regularly as a group of Christians, where is it that people who stop meeting with us go? Where do they decide to now spend their time, and who do they spend their time with? Is it someone and somewhere where they'll be spiritually fed? I guarantee you, as friendly as the world seems when we feel low about our faith, and as awful and as wrong as it is when we upset each other as Christians, those who are not for God are against him. Things were bad for David, but he made a bad choice in going with unbelievers, in spending his time and aligning himself with those who didn't believe in the one true God. If we do the same, if we become dissatisfied with a church or our congregation or someone who's upset us, who's supposed to know better because they're a person of faith, if we choose to then go the opposite direction and spend time with people who don't believe, we've made a bad decision. David will find that he's got to make another decision. He finds that he's got to now join with the Philistines and fight against the people of God. You know, this group, these Philistines, gave him a town to live in. Now you'd think, well, I've made the right choice with these people treating me this way. After 15 years of being hunted down by Saul, here's a group who have given me a place to live. These people, David and those with him, hadn't got a place to call home and hadn't for quite some time. This seemed like they were doing the right thing until this decision had to be made. We're going to fight the Israelites, and as we've given you one of our towns, you should come with us. However, the lords of the Philistines noticed David and his men at the rear of the army, and they said to Achish, who had taken David in, he can't come with us. What if he turns against us? What if he tries to impress Saul to get back in his favour by attacking us? So David and his 600 men are sent back home to Ziklag. Saul's trying to kill him. The Philistines, his new friends, don't trust him. But at least David has got his 600 men by his side. That is until they get back to Ziklag. David is faced with another dilemma. Another enemy has attacked the city. It has been burned to the ground. His wives and his children and the families of those men that he's with have been taken captive, and they can only imagine what might be happening to them. Who can understand life, eh? Who can understand why it is that when we're low, that's when another problem seems to come? When we've made peace with one disappointment, along comes another. As we've come through one storm, here comes another. As soon as we're on top of one tragedy, here comes another. The Apostle Paul even tells us when we get to the New Testament, we're troubled on every side, we're stressed, we're perplexed, we're persecuted. Sometimes we'll beat us up, and when it's beating us up, it will knock us down, and when it's knocked us down, it will wrestle us and overwhelm us. It seems that there's no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. One problem comes after another. A cherished relationship might have been burned with fire. A marriage might have been burned down. Your finances have been taken captive to bills. And your bills get married and have children and produce more bills. And there's never enough income to keep up with it all. Our minds are taken captive by anxiety, taken captive by depression. Our physical health is taken captive by sickness. And it wouldn't surprise me if someone listening to this can actually speak to these things even at this moment. never seems to be far away. But what are we going to do about it? Did David choose pity, or did he choose power? When life happens to you, not if, but when, what path are you as a child of God going to choose to deal with it? David is stressed, is in a dilemma. All that he and his men can do is weep. And they cry so much, we're told, that eventually they had no strength to even cry anymore. There are times in your life, perhaps, when you have lamented something, when you've cried and expressed yourself with tears to the point that all you can do after you've cried that much is go and take a nap. We shouldn't be embarrassed about that. In the New Testament again, we're told to weep with those who weep. So there's going to be times in our life when, as we say, a little rain might fall, when all there is that's left to do is to cry because we don't know what else to do. The same people who trusted David's leadership have now turned on him. The same people who are loyal followers are now talking about stoning him. These same men who, when David met them, were in debt. They were in distress. They were down in the dumps. And the only success they ever knew in life was success that David brought them. And now, after all that David has done, they're talking about stoning him. Have you ever been on the receiving end of that? When all you tried to do was give yourself to your loved ones. All you tried to do was be faithful in your relationships. And then when life got difficult, they were the very ones who turned on you. If you don't believe me, read the story of Jesus. Consider what's happening with David. It happened to them. It's probably happened to you. Or at least you might know someone who seems to always have these problems crowding in on them. If we could ask those who are going to stone David, are you really going to stone him? David, the one who believed in you. David, the one who fed you, the one who brought you success. Is this the one that you're going to stone? And they say, yeah. If we hadn't joined him, we wouldn't be in this problem right now. They forget that the trouble that they've been brought from. Things have been going so well, but now David has a dilemma that turns into a distressful situation. Sometimes we might sit in our church meetings with our halos polished and our Sunday best on, looking like everything's fine. We're with the people that we love. We're worshipping God. Everything's great. But let's be honest. There are times when life can really hurt. There are times when we can be wounded by people's words or actions. Sometimes life can steal our joy. Have you ever had a day when it's difficult just to get out of bed? When you're rolling around in the bed at night trying to get to sleep, but this problem just won't go from your mind? We've all had these situations, and David now is faced with another decision to make. He cried until he could cry no more, and he can choose just to lie down and complain and give up. He could say, I've tried and I've failed and I'm not going any further. I've done the best I can for these people and still it's not good enough. But that's not the decision that David makes. Saul wants him dead. His new friends, the Philistines, don't want him around. His city is burned to the ground. His wives and daughters and those of his men have been taken captive. And now those very same men want to stone him dead. What does he do? And there we read it at the end of verse 6 of 1 Samuel chapter 30. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. He did it himself. And sometimes you've got to do it yourself. See, in the world's eyes, David had no one and nowhere to go. But because he had God, he had somewhere to go and someone to turn to. He brought God into his circumstances with that word. But all this is going on, but there is something else if you're a child of God. When you're surrounded by trouble like David was, but Saul wanted him dead, but the Philistines didn't want him around, but his wives and children were kidnapped, but his men blamed him and wanted him out of the way, but there are fantastic changes that can be made because of the opportunity to say, this thing has happened, but because of God, but. There are so many instances where we read of this idea that all seems lost, but Job, who suffered more than Job? Who could ever face what Job did and still be standing? He suffered in a terrible way, and at the end of it all he said, I heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. It was terrible what he went through, but he says, now I see God. I had heard of him, but now I know God. You might be suffering now, but God can bring you through it. There is something to learn. There is something that God is revealing to us. Habakkuk came to the conclusion that though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet, or but, I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. What's your but God story? What caused you distress but God? You've got a powerful and convincing story to tell because of God. Your story is better than this little talk. It's something that you experienced, but God. Can you remember a but God moment in your life? And it is that you need to draw strength from when things aren't going so well. If I can just remember to put a but God into my situation, I know that he might not come when I want him to come. He might not answer when I want him to answer. He might not even do what I want him to do when I want him to do it. But if I can drag myself into the presence of God, when I've cried so much, all I want to do is take a nap and put a but God into that situation, because whatever this world can offer is going to pass away, but God is for eternity. David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. And I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but there's going to be moments in your life when there will be no one around to help you. When, after you have been there for everybody else, they're not there for you. You ran yourself ragged trying to meet everybody else's needs and everybody else's expectations, but when you needed them most, they disappeared. When, if you've got elders, the elders don't eld and the deacons don't deek, or the teacher doesn't inspire you with their lessons, or the hymns are not the ones that you like, or there's serious trouble in your life, you might need at that very moment to strengthen yourself in the Lord your God. And it isn't always somebody else's fault. And it's not always somebody else's responsibility. Where there are elders, they would never purposely let you down. The deacons would want to be there for you. The teacher wants to do their best. But maybe on a particular occasion when you're in need, they can't be there for you because they are struggling with their own loads, weighed down with their own burdens, besieged with their own trials. Give the other person a break sometimes. Realise that every now and then you've got to strengthen yourself in the Lord your God. A time might come when you need to grab yourself by the scruff of the neck, give yourself a good shaking, and understand that things are bad. Others can't be there, but you can strengthen yourself in the Lord your God. You can do it yourself. Faith in God is proved in the furnace of affliction, not when everything's going well. David from time to time said the following things, and we'd do well to remember some of these phrases. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. To remember that strengthened him in the Lord is God. He said, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Who shall I fear? On another occasion he said, the Lord is the strength of my life. Of who shall I be afraid? I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continually be in my mouth. I will lift up my eyes unto the hills from whence comes my help. Where does my help come from? All of my help comes from the Lord. All of his help comes from the Lord, not that other person. I don't know how people who don't believe in God get through life and how they face the difficulties of life. It's even hard for us to understand when we do believe in God why there is suffering in the world and why we suffer. But there is a God, and there is a God we can turn to in those times to help us through it. So let's not give up on God because times are tough, because times sometimes are tough. It doesn't prove the existence of God. It doesn't show that God isn't around. These things happen because this is the broken world that we live in. But we have got God. Those who are children of God should never give up what with the precious blood of his Son. We receive through him the forgiveness of sin and eternal life. These cannot be found anywhere else. Even if others should know better, they may well let you down at times. Don't leave the faith. Don't walk away from God. Don't go and make friendships with unbelievers because you don't think you're getting what you should from those who do believe. If giving up the faith means you've got to do it yourself, then be sure that whatever comes at you from within or without, you will do it yourself. You will strengthen yourself in the Lord your God.